I heard a couple people talking about Josh Hoover leaving. I'm gonna tell you what, it could happen, but I find it to be a long shot. Oh yeah, it's Locked On Horned Frogs. Play my music.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? I'm Darian Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, host of your favorite one-stop shop for everything TCU athletics, Monday through Friday, but you know it better as the Locked On Horned Frogs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one sports podcast network in the country. Now, we're going to have my good friend Parker Ainsworth join the show today to talk a little bit of Alamo Bowl versus Texas Bowl, TCU versus Houston, why TCU was prioritized over the Cougars. It's some fun talk to close out the last two segments of today's episode. But the first one is me telling every single fan to calm down. Calm down. I think there's a lot of fans who don't feel this way, but for those who are concerned about Josh Hoover's departure, calm down. It's okay. I don't believe that it's going to happen. This was actually something that caught me by surprise last week. So after the season was over, after you have that last game versus Cincinnati, I hear 2-3 people in my comments talking about see ya Hoover, bye Hoover. I'm sitting there thinking, did I miss something? I didn't. Obviously, Josh Hoover is still a Horned Frog. But the thing is, people are projecting and kind of assuming or preparing for the departure of Josh Hoover. And I can't blame you. But I don't think that you need to be overly concerned because of what he said last year. Now, I'm going to tell you this. The negation of this notion is way more interesting than actually the case for it happening. And I don't want to make it seem like it's delusional. I don't want to make it seem like this is a fear that you just made up. I think the idea of Josh Hoover departing is par for the course as far as college football goes. It's kind of regular. You see a school I think there's two divisions because college football has become more of a classism sport than it has ever, in my opinion. This is such a classism sport that you divide, obviously, FBS and FCS. There's a division there naturally. But then within the FBS, you have the P4 and you have the G5. So the Power 4 and Group of 5. There's a divide there. Then you have the P4, which this division is not as strong, but I believe there's a growing division between the SEC and Big 12 on one side, and then the SEC and Big 10 on one side, and then the Big 12 and ACC on the other side. The reason that this is more of a fracture as opposed to a divide is it doesn't really hurt individuals. Right, like if you have a star player from TCU, people aren't saying, "Oh man, he didn't go up against anybody. He should have went down the road to Texas so you can play SEC football." It's not that, but I do believe that as far as teams go, and we see this best reflected in the college football playoffs, the SEC and the Big Ten, they're prioritized. They're looked at as the two best conferences, which mean they have the best distribution of talent, and they're going to get the most talent in there because when you face a mid-tier SEC or Big Ten team, it's viewed way differently than if you face a mid-tier ACC or Big 12 team. So that's what I mean when I say there's a fracture. And with that fracture, it would be easy to assume that Josh Hoover would say, I've had a good run here in Fort Worth. I'm going to go to an SEC school. I'm going to go to a Big Ten school. I'm going to be the next Francisco Mendoza, right? Like that would be a safe way to say, or a safe assumption to make, knowing the way that college football goes, knowing the way that college athletics operate. Everybody sees this happen every single year. Why would Josh Hoover be any different? Let's use a Sam Leavitt. I think Sam Leavitt's time with Arizona State is pretty much over. I don't think that is going to be a marriage that's repaired. And it seems like for all intents and purposes, there is at least a divorce that is brewing. It's not crazy to say, actually, it'd be factually correct to say that Arizona State has been a better team than TCU over the last two seasons. They just have. They were better. They made the playoffs a year ago. I do wonder what this looks like in 2025 with a healthy Sam Leavitt, because they did lose to Utah. No Leavitt. They did lose to Arizona in the last game of the season. No Leavitt. They beat Texas Tech, but Texas Tech had no starting quarterback on their side. Imagine, even with that Mississippi State loss, Imagine Arizona State knocks off Texas Tech, and maybe they just lose one game, and somehow they get into the college, or excuse me, into the Big 12 championship. You beat Texas Tech already. You lose to them this time. Does Arizona State get into the college football playoffs? There's a real conversation of whether Sam Leavitt's health kept the Sun Devils out of a college football spot. That's not even me being hyperbolic. I know that's stretching some of reality, but it's not me being hyperbolic because they did lose some games in which he was hurt. So Sam Leavitt, with all of the success that they just had, the idea that maybe if he was healthy, they could have had a much better 2025, at least be a top 20, top 25 team. Even with all that being the case, he's gone. He's leaving a school that he made it to the college football playoffs with. Josh Hoover ain't done that. Josh Hoover has not made it to the college football playoffs. And this is not a get rid of Hoover because he hasn't made it to the playoffs. This is Hoover, ideally, this is the concept. Hoover is so talented that he feels like his talents are being wasted at Fort Worth. So if they feel like they're being wasted at TCU, then you go to a bigger school. You go ahead and go there. You're going to boost your draft stock. You're going to play with better players. You're going to have a better surrounding than you have in TCU, right? These are the concepts that make people think players are going to leave. And I think it's fair. And let's not forget money. Let's not forget money, because at the end of the day, that is what this is all about. You know, people can get bought, but it's also the reason I don't feel like TCU is at that much of a risk. Because despite all of the things that you lay out, despite all of the things that may entice a player to go to another school, and I get it, money is not the one that I'm concerned about, because I just saw Josh Hoover turn down money in 2024. And he was coming off of a much better season. So I would only imagine that $1 million that Tennessee offered him, what's it going to get to? 1.2? The thing about money, though, that this is the tricky thing, is though I'm confident that Josh Hoover is going to stay in, though I'm confident that Josh Hoover is going to stay in Fort Worth, he's going to stay at TCU. I'm confident about that because I just saw him turn down money. At the same time, everybody has a price. Ted DiBiase taught me that one. Everybody has a price. And there becomes a point where you just can't say no. I don't know if Josh Hoover gets that off of this season, right? Like maybe if he would have built off his 2024 with an even better year, then maybe you have a conversation. Does it go up to 2 million? And then it's like, but when does Josh Hoover just say, I got to do it? I have to do it. We've seen it. This is how it operates now. I just saw Bryce Underwood tell Michigan no 27 times. And they said, we'll give you $35 million. I don't know the exact number, but they gave him a ton of money. They gave Bryce Underwood a ton of money after publicly being told no repeatedly. And it reached a point where Bryce Underwood said, look, I'm the best quarterback in the country, obviously. Michigan is close to home. I'm just going to go ahead and go. Does Josh Hoover have that point where it's like, all right, you've offered me too much for me to decline? Sorry, it's been love, TCU. I do love Fort Worth. I do love TCU. It's a place I want to be. This is all things he said last year. He said, I see TCU as a top program. So I think maybe that aspect of a top program, you're already at one in his mind. So you don't have to worry about that. But yeah, he said, my family's close. I love it here. I love my teammates. I love the coaches. I want to go win the Big 12 championship. The only thing that makes me wonder if it could change where things kind of are right now is Kendall Browse's pending departure. Could be something that sways him. I don't know. But other than that, there's not a lot of changing factors. And I just do not believe he's going to get that Godfather offer where you end up getting just too much money to say no. So I think TCU is pretty safe. I think that TCU is going to see Josh Hoover in their purple next year. So I seen that it was an interesting conversation. Like I said, the negation of the notion is way more simplistic than the idea of the possibility. But it was an interesting conversation. Hopefully I calmed your nerves. Hopefully. In the meantime, though, we're going to keep pushing forward before we bring Parker on the show as we continue with Locked On Horned Frogs. Today's episode is brought to you by Omaha Steaks. And listen, I love the holidays. I love giving gifts that put smiles on people's face. And I know Omaha Steaks is always the deal, or excuse me, the way to go if you're dealing with people who love to cook, if you're dealing with people who like to get on the grill, give them Omaha Steaks. But you know what? here's the thing: is it's not just steaks. I know it's in the website. Visit omahasteaks.com. I understand that it's in the website, it's in the promo, but they also have desserts. They also have burgers. They also have just comfort food. It's not like, hey, man, throw a T-bone on the steak or throw a T-bone on the grill or I don't want it. It's not that. It's so many other options. So please visit omahasteaks.com and get in tune with all of the things that they have to offer for you. But their steaks are perfectly aged. And, oh, my God, absolutely tender. Anyway, I want you to save big on gourmet gifts and more holiday favors with Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide during their Sizzle All the Way sale. And for an extra $35 off, use the promo code COLLEGE at checkout. Terms apply. See site for details. That's omahasteaks.com and the code COLLEGE. As we continue with the Locked On Horned Frogs podcast, as promised, I have Parker Ainsworth here with me. You remember him from just a couple of weeks ago when we did our...
Hey now.
Oh,
that never happened. I don't know what you're talking about.
You're right. But you know what did happen? TCU got picked over Houston for the Alamo Bowl. It's just I only have you here on adversarial, pieces. I'm sorry. I actually happen to like Parker a lot, but this is just how we end up talking. But no, on a serious note, the Horned Frogs made it to the Alamo Bowl while the Cougars made it to the Texas Bowl. And the idea was that Houston's ranked. They're the better team. They're going to make it to the better bowl game. They have the better record, right? Like these are things that we probably all assumed, but it comes out that TCU was picked over Houston because of fan support and traveling ability. And I know I host Locked On Horned Frogs, but I think that is a poor way to decide who gets to go to what bowl game. I feel like bowl games should be based off of the team, not the fans. I don't quite understand what the argument is. I guess it's a business operation where we want to bring in the most money. I get it. But at the same time, I almost feel like operating with that as the priority jeopardizes what the game is supposed to be, or compromises. Doesn't jeopardize it, but it compromises the game as a competition to me. And now it's just a business move.
Yeah, and it's interesting. And I appreciate you saying that as a TCU podcaster, because frankly, I talk about stuff that happens across the Big 12 all the time. Like, listen, if and when Houston's in this position as a Big 12 school, like this could very well be important to like understand, or to have, if we want to fix it before it happens to us, kind of situations with like what happened to BYU or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. The idea that how well your fans travel changes what quality of bowl game you're in is a weird one. It's not the weirdest part of bowl season, I guess, but I don't mean to like toot Houston's horn. Plenty of people have been talking about the fan support or whatever. They had a lot of people make the trip to San Antonio for the Final Four just last April. Like it was a lot of bread in that stadium among some national fan bases in Duke and Auburn and Florida. And I thought Houston represented very well in making the trip down I-10. I understand that that's particular to the Alamo Bowl, and they got particularly picked for the Kinder's Texas Bowl because it's in Houston. But like even the Pop-Tarts Bowl, which I think in an old ranking system would have been there in between, like they did show up at the postseason thing in basketball, and I guess this is different. The basketball program and football programs are very different, but it's a weird way to pick it, given that Houston was the ranked team here.
Yeah, and do you think there's overlap in how you travel for basketball and football? I'm just thinking that. Like you mentioned how it's maybe a little different. Do you think there is some overlap? Do you think they're separate?
I think that, frankly, and we all saw the game, Houston was 60 seconds away from winning a national championship. Everyone thought that was a once-in-a-lifetime kind of weekend. And frankly, it was still a very special Final Four game at that. I think bowl season's weird in that it is over the holidays and people see family and whatever. San Antonio's been very nice to me, so I shouldn't say this too loudly. TCU's playing USC, if I'm not mistaken. And if I could pick to be in Southern California watching that on a big screen or in San Antonio, I'd probably pick Southern California. Like I don't know how many Trojans are going to be at this game. It's an interesting way to pick on that end too. But y'all got picked. Do you feel like you've got great fan turnout at road games, Darian? That's not something I necessarily associate with TCU.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't know. It was weird. I don't know if it's a much enough of a difference for me to say I'm going to go with the unranked team. Right, like I'm still trying to grasp as I'm here what the different turnouts are. Right, so like I'm still in the process of accumulating information on that, but I don't feel like it's been such a drastic difference that we're going to go with the team that was ranked in the college football playoffs, got votes in the was the leading vote getter in the AP top 25, because essentially, and this is the first time in a decade that a ranked Big 12 team hasn't been there. So the question isn't even necessarily, hey, does TCU have better fan support than Houston? Argue amongst yourselves on that. To me, the question is the gap in fan support between TCU and Houston enough to break tradition? That's the real question. I can't say it now. BYU, they go insane, right? Like maybe BYU we would say, okay, cool, but there's not many schools that are break tradition type of fan support, and so I don't know about this one. It struggles to make sense to me.
Well, and again, like it's TCU versus Houston this year, but if it's TCU versus BYU in a year for a more profitable bowl game or something like that, I would assume that most Horned Frogs would say like, no, the better team should get to go. I don't think it's a crazy statement to make. And again, Houston had a 9-win season. They're going to the Texas Bowl. It's all great. And frankly, I like the matchup with LSU in that game because LSU's got God knows what going on in bowl season, and they might not have 22 players. Who knows what's happening by the time we get there.
We've seen that before with them, so yeah.
Yeah. And so maybe it all worked out. It's a weird deal where, Houston is the fourth highest ranked team in the Big 12. I guess fifth because you got Tech in the college football playoff, and then you got Utah and BYU there at just outside the playoff picture. BYU like just outside, and Arizona's right in front of Houston. And like Arizona and Utah actually technically take their Pac-12 tie-ins, or they're able to. So they're because the Pac-12 had a bunch of TV deals that didn't expire when the conference expired or something weird like that.
Okay.
And so when I was tracking what bowl game Houston was going to be in, a lot of people were looking at Pop-Tarts and Alamo because Pop-Tarts are fun and Alamo is, a big deal or whatever. But it's interesting to see it all play out. Did you have any idea that TCU was up for the Alamo Bowl?
No. I think when I was looking, I think it was a Texas Bowl. I think
just directly flip flop.
If I'm not mistaken, I think in my watching and my studying, they are at first projected. Everybody has their different projections, but the first one I saw was TCU versus Cal, and obviously Cal decided to opt out pretty early. They said very early, we're not doing it. And then I think it was TCU versus North Texas in another bowl game. I can't remember which one it was. It was either North Texas or Tulane. And I remember not wanting to do that. I didn't like that because then you're playing a team that doesn't have their coach. Neither one of them would have had their coach in this game. So, yeah, I don't know. I can't find it right now. Oh, here we go. So one prediction was TCU versus UNT in the Texas Bowl. And then the other one was TCU versus Cal in the Liberty Bowl. So, I mean, I could see TCU versus North Texas in the Texas Bowl. Both teams local. Just go ahead and drive down 45 and whatnot to get to Houston. I'm with you. We talked about this before. I want to bring it on camera. The merit system just makes sense. Hey, you're second place in the Big 12. You're going here. The subjectivity to me takes away from what the decision should look like. What's the decision process? All right, we want to get the best teams versus the best teams, right? Like ideally, that's the point. Let's get the best teams versus the best teams, and not the best fan base versus the best fan base. I don't know. I'm not a big business guy.
But it's frankly, it's not really about that. And I will admit that, like with opt-outs and transfer portals and kids, going pro and coaches changing, I guess the team that ends the season as the second or third best team might not actually be the second or third best team. But they're not picking this based on that either, because they picked this before all of those happen. Like, who knows who opts out in the next 10 days, right? So, like, if the Alamo Bowl is the best payout option, etc., for a Big 12 school, then it stands to reason that it should be the top school that didn't. It should be BYU, frankly. It should be the top school that didn't make it in the playoff ultimately. I don't know. It's also weird that Houston's playing at Energy Stadium. It's not a home game, but it is just down the road. It doesn't really feel like, say what you want about fans and travel. If I were LSU, LSU's got a pretty big fan base in Houston. Other schools might be more upset about that, I guess, though, right? Like if it feels like a home game for Houston in a lot of ways.
Yeah. I guess opt-outs could be a reason that you go fan support. Hey, we don't know who's playing, but we know who's going to show up. I guess. I think that these type of conversations between you and I, though they're great, they make good content, they're interesting conversations, they shouldn't happen. It should be pretty easy. 2, 3, 4, and yes, there's other arguments, but I feel like this is what I often say. And how many times am I going to run into a problem based off this decision versus that decision? Like, how often am I going to have to hear people complain about the opt-outs? We didn't know. You can't complain to me about opt-outs when I didn't know, right? So I probably will go there, but hey, TCU got a better bowl game. So what am I crying about? Let's go ahead and play USC. Let's see if you can get that win. That'd be a huge victory. I think it would change a lot for TCU going into 2026. So it's a huge opportunity. Do I feel like it would have been achieved if I was making decisions? No, because I would have went with the slot system. But I'm going to take it. But let's move forward to the whole legitimacy of this, not just why it happened, but the idea that Houston just doesn't travel. Is it real? Is it fake? Is it built on something that is being overblown? I want to talk to it, and I'll use some of my Houston experience as well as we continue with Locked On Horned Frogs. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. If you're trying to go to the Alamo Bowl because TCU's there, then you can go ahead and get those tickets today for just over $70. It doesn't matter where you want to sit. You'll have a perfect view, but you can also test it. All right. So you can also say, oh, this is what I'll be seeing. Cool. I'm gonna go there. But maybe you just want to go to a Mavericks game, right? Maybe you want to go to the Mavericks, see a Cooper Flag, see an Anthony Davis. One day Kyrie should be back. You'll be able to see Kyrie. Maybe you just want to go enjoy something in the Metroplex. You can do that as well. The World Cup is coming to Dallas. I think it's actually coming to Arlington. Let's keep it real. Arlington, Texas, stand up and go get your tickets. Go get your tickets at Gametime. You can get all of the best seats. Once again, see everything from your view or see your view from your seat before even buying your ticket. All in prices means you won't be surprised by any of the fees, and that's perfect for me. So I love going to Gametime no matter where I'm going. I might go to an AEW event, might go to a TNA event. I'm a big wrestling guy. Gametime is the way to go. Need perfect seats for when I see Leon Slater or Mercedes Monet. Hey now, say now, go to Gametime and use the code Locked On College to get $20 off your first purchase. As we wrap up today's episode of Locked On Horned Frogs, I appreciate you making this your first listen of the day every day, making it all the way to segment 3, and I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. I still have Parker here with me, and we just talked about whether or not Houston's ability or willingness to travel should even have a factor in their bowl game. But there's a difference between what should and shouldn't happen and actually just going on reality. The reality is bowl games didn't want to pick Houston because traveling. Is this a myth? Is this overblown, or is this real?
I think there are a lot of pictures about Houston's fans at like kickoff of 11 a.m. Saturday games and stuff like that get great engagement online. And it's like, oh, let's laugh at this, school they just left in the Power 4 with bad fan engagement, whatever. And well, I'm not sitting here saying that there aren't gaps to fill and things to grow and all of that. I don't think it doesn't make sense when you look at the big picture on things. Darian, I don't mean to, peek behind the kimono a little bit, but you spent a number of years in Houston. Mm-hmm. As well as anyone, there's a lot of things to do. Yeah. And so, at 11 a.m. on a Saturday, whether you're recovering from Friday night, getting ready for Saturday night, or somewhere in between, that there's just a lot of things going on. I also, and this maybe because when I moved away from Houston, again, peeking behind kimono, I don't live anymore. It was kind of in the middle of this window, but a lot of the people that are your strong alumni base now are people in their mid 30s, early 40s, that window.
Yeah.
And then they're taking their kids, or you got people that said they want to go to Houston because they grew up rooting for them, and that those people are now 20 years old. The window where, and I could belabor this point for a long time if you want to, where Houston misses join the Big 12 when the Southwest Conference dissolves, right? They get cast to the side, and sports gets put on the back burner at the school for a bunch of reasons, and it's also not a big conference school anymore, and they're not competing against their friends anymore, or they're rivals and things like that.
Yeah.
That window of people that were at the school when sports were not a big deal, before Case Keenum, before Kevin Cobb, those people are now in their 40s and having kids, and the kids that were watching in 2002 and 2008, it's just now that you're having kids that were born around Case Keenum time going to college and actually having that experience. Like, it's just taking some time to build that momentum back from a gigantic step backwards. And I think that all of those play a factor. I also think bluntly that, if we talk to our buddies over like Cam Stewart at Baylor or other places, I mean, I don't know what you think about TCU's attendance, Darian. I think generally speaking, people are hurting for cash, and Gametime's going to help them out with getting reasonable tickets, but tickets cost money. That's just the end of the day. That's the reality of it, right, D? Like,
Yeah. No, this is facts. All right. Now I told them you can go ahead and get these tickets for the Alamo Bowl at about $70, but people, you're right. It's hard. Times are hard. People are conserving. And I think the point, like, I should just let you keep going. I was going to talk about my Houston experience, but you're relating the alumni base and the window and everything. That probably is one of the biggest, I can only assume, factors. Like, it may be number one or two, but yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it sucks because that's going to take time. And I think the worst part for you is that when you do achieve the attendance you want, the stigma is still going to be there for some years. It's not like as soon as you get that off in actuality that the perception changes. No, you're going to have to show that. You're going to have to show, I sold out 3 straight years in a row. What more do you want from me? It's those type of things. But yeah, no, I'll say from my experience at Texas Southern when I was in college, it was just always something else to do. That was always the name of the game in Houston. Is there's so many things to do, and so many people want to do them. Specifically, the not the alum, but the students. Like, the students want to go do other things. The students may not want to go to the campus, or excuse me, not want to leave the dorm to go to the stadium, even though it's on campus. A nice little stadium. I went one time. I think they played TSU, but. Nice stadium, but they might not want to go, and everybody's not a diehard football head like I am. I was going to go regardless. I didn't care what I was doing at Friday night, and I already wasn't a super go out person, but it didn't matter to me. If I got in at 3:00 and the game was at 11, I was there. So everybody isn't that, but that's a wonderful point, specifically about the fan base, or excuse me, the alumni base.
Well, and every school's had that. I mean, TCU jumped into the Power Four, about a dozen years before Houston. And so the other thing I think, though, is that they had like kind of a national level of success right before they did that, right, with the Rose Bowl and stuff like that. Great stories, frankly. Did it for the whole Group of 5. But I do think that there's some layers to this problem, and I think it's interesting too. We invest all this money into TV revenue and the best TV product and whatever, and then, like, heaven forbid people just sit on their couch and use it. Right? Like that, all that TV money is going to something. And the TNT broadcasts have been phenomenal. People complain about other ones, but the TNT shows, I thought that you were pretty good.
Yeah, you know what? What are the network numbers on Houston?
I mean, lower than a city the size of Houston should have, but they're not the bottom or anything like that. They also won some games which helped, and the basketball team obviously is through the roof, but that's not really, I think, a part of this conversation. The basketball team had games that were more watched than NBA Finals games last year on television, just because they were playing the Final Four, playing National Championship, right? Big deals. But the football program is not the very bottom of the conference, but it gets talked about like it's very bottom of the conference, which is fascinating to me.
Yeah, you're a basketball school. I went to a basketball school, right? So I'm not taking a shot. TSU was a basketball school. And nobody cared about football, but you know what? When the basketball games came on, people were there. And unfortunately, I said this multiple times when I was at Locked on HBCU, especially when you're in the heart of Texas. I don't think that helps. But when you are a basketball school in between football schools, no one cares. No one seems to care. And they kind of identify you with your football team struggles and don't. I think you guys are broken out of that because you're so good. You have Dream, you have Samson, like you have a lot of things that go with your basketball school to where people are respecting you in the same way that Duke could be terrible at football, no one cares. North Carolina could be terrible at football, no one cares. Houston could be terrible or not attended because you guys did well this year, so I'm not going to take no shots as far as quality, but not poor or poorly attended, and no one's going to care. I think outside of our chat. No one's gonna give you any slack off the chat, but maybe the most of the world's like, okay, we don't really care if Houston's not doing this. Are they going to get to the Final Four again? But that will all change because you have the number one quarterback in the nation coming in. I tip my hat to you on that, sir, if I had one. But I appreciate you, Parker, coming on, breaking this down with us. We'll be back tomorrow. We have Sarah Smith coming on. We'll be talking Kendall Browse again, as well as Jamie Dixon. And she has a very interesting stat about Coach Dixon in TCU men's basketball. We'll be back on that Wednesday. In the meantime, in between time, make sure you're checking out Locked On Cougs, breaking out everything around Houston. And no, we're not talking attendance. We're talking about quality football and basketball. I appreciate you coming on, Parker. In the meantime, in between time, until the next time that we hear each other, family, take care. Stay blessed. Peace.